Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Let's do our study group for warriors. It's bright and early. Daily discipline, mind, body, and soul. It's Sunday. Let's get into it. Here's the first thing on my notes from last week. I study every day. You guys should be studying every day. Let's just go through my notes like we usually do on Sundays. I was listening to an interview with a content creator on YouTube who their channel used to be kind of nothing like this channel. And then they blew up and now they have a big successful channel. Who they are doesn't matter. I'm not trying to promote anybody. What I found interesting about the conversation was she wasn't happy with the success. She enjoyed the money, but she didn't like the interaction and she didn't like what had happened to her content and to the people that followed her. And I could see this being a problem, especially with the internet, but I think it happens with anybody who is going pop, so to speak. With music, I used to promote rock bands. And if you happen to get signed and you get famous and you become a big giant famous band, which may be your dream, and you give up that garage band status and you give up the small venues and play big stadiums and you make that transition, maybe that, that's a lot of people's dream. It's a double-edged sword and you may not like it. You may be desperate to go back to the days when you were playing those small bars. I've talked to a couple comedians like that where they kind of wish that they could go back to sleeping in small shitty hotels, playing small venues, that even though that felt like struggle at the time and all they did was dream about the big time, when they got to the big time, it wasn't what they wanted it to be. Fame is kind of like an ocean and you have to ride it. You can't control it and force it to do what you want it to do. Those waves can make you or break you. I mean, mass market will make you money, but it'll drive you mad. And one thing that people notice is that what you really end up doing when you go mass market, particularly on YouTube, if you have a channel that just blows up, that you expand way beyond the boundaries of your market niche. So you may have started off really just only attracting a certain target market to your channel. And then when you blew up, everybody found out about you, and really all it was is just a whole bunch of toxic shitheads who are now commenting on your videos, watching 1 second of it, 2 seconds of it, making nasty comments, and then going on like little drive-by shootings. And you might wish that you could just go back to your hardcore heads. I'm sure there's a way to do it and be successful, to go mass market and to still remain cool, to go pop and to still be cool. I just don't know how that works. I'm kind of an underground motherfucker, always have been. Here's the next one. This is a funny statement. You guys are gonna have to hash this out with me. I don't know if I believe this. I write stuff down when I'm in my shop or doing my thing. I'm always listening to podcasts and talks, and I'm reading a lot. And this was by a very religious guy from Philadelphia, and he said, if a woman marries a man, now follow me here, if a woman marries a man who's not her husband, so her husband and her they break up, and then she goes and marries some other dude. She dumps you because you got some little limp, soft little wee-wee, and she wants a real man, and she dumps you. And she goes for David Goggins instead of you. She's an adulterer. Here's the rule. In order for a woman to be able to, this is according to Christianity, sometimes the Christian rules are funny. In order for a woman to be able to move on to a man, to go from one man to the next, from one husband to the next husband, in order for her to do that, her last husband has to be dead. If that motherfucker ain't dead, they just broke up because he was a jerk or whatever it is, you can't fuck with her. That's a rule in the Bible. All you hardcore Christians, you got to follow your little rules. What does the Bible stand for? Basic instructions before leaving Earth. I just think that's kind of funny. That the dude has to be dead. She can't just leave him because he's a jerk and just want a new man because she don't like the last one. Now the guy's got to be dead. Now I'm not suggesting you go kill your husband. Any of these women out there thinking go sharpen their knives, they're like, okay, we can do that. Let's move to the next one. Here's another religious one, but I'm not trying to preach religion. Let's talk about preachers though. What's a preacher? A preacher is just somebody who decides to run his mouth, thinks he knows everything. Preachers technically are chosen by God, and they kind of get the calling to become a preacher. So there's like 1 in 1,000 people who's a preacher. 1 in 1,000 men can preach and teach the Word of God. So there's lots of preachers. It even mentions this in the Bible about 1 in 1,000 men can teach the Word of God. It's not a direct quote, but that's in the Bible, New Testament. So there's what, 7 billion people on earth or more, 9 billion, who knows? Well, there's lots of preachers. You might be one. You might be constantly getting messages and you bottle them up. It might be time for you to start your own YouTube channel. Let's go to the next one. Here's another funny rule. I like these funny Christian rules, man. Any man who comes into your house should be circumcised, even a guest. Now, I'm not going to check, but isn't that funny? This shows your devotion to God. Now, if you look at it this symbolically, a king, for example. A king only wants people in his crew. Like if a king is going to go off to battle and he's going to assemble his little knights and he's going to say, okay, come on homies, we got to go out there and defeat the enemy. He only wants guys in his little army that are willing to die today. You willing to die? You got kids and a wife, and I know you love her. Are you willing to die today? You're not coming home today. We're going to die today. He only wants people on his team that are devoted like that have that kind of devotion. So when you make this rule, any man who comes into your home should be circumcised, even a guest, it means that any person who comes into your crew, into your circle, into your family, into your abode, that they should be devoted to God. Don't let people who are double negative, but avoid people who are not devoted to God. Let's move on to the next one. Why do people backlash against someone who chooses to be sober? It's confusing to me. It happened to me, and I've done it to others. Before I went sober, when I was still partying, still a drug addict and alcoholic, I had a friend who went sober, and we had kind of a falling out over it. It wasn't an argument or anything, but I thought that person changed, and he did, and I didn't like the change. I thought he was not cool anymore. I stopped calling him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And when my brother would ask, yeah, where's your friend? And I would tell him, fuck that motherfucker kind of attitude. He's changed, man. He's not cool, and he's not one of us anymore kind of attitude. And I regretted doing that. But then when I went sober years later, 10 years later or so, I went sober. And the same thing happened to me. I had friends of mine that dumped me. They don't want to have nothing to do with me no more. I remember I saw a buddy of mine. I had been hanging out with these guys, a little crew of dudes, for like 7 years. Every day we hang out. And then everything just stopped. I went sober and nobody's calling Sky no more. Nobody wants to hang out with me no more. Nobody's inviting me nowhere anymore. I saw a couple of the dudes and they were talking about a party that they went to the previous night. And I was like, you guys were just at a party? And they're like, oh yeah, we all went. I'm like, well, why didn't you call me? Motherfucker told me right to my face, because you're dead to us now. I was dead to them because I stopped drinking, because I stopped using hard drugs. I was dead. All of a sudden I was dead. Why do people backlash against somebody who just simply chooses to go sober? Let's move on to the next one. Here's a rule about addiction. The good thing about addiction is it can be cured. Addiction can be cured. I've cured it. You can cure it today, right now. The bad thing is that you have to go sober and take that cure every fucking day. Going sober and being free from your addictions is a daily struggle. You're going to have to take that cure every day. You're going to have to find your confidence, to find that fight in you, to fight against it, to fight against your desires, to fight against your weaknesses. You're going to have to find that spear and that shield every single day for the rest of your life. And some people don't have that fight in them. And that's why they die junkies. Here's enough time to do a couple more. Here's a statement that's been swirling around my head at least 20 years, at least. If you want it to change, if you want it to end, you must go back to the beginning. That's the statement. If you want it to end, you must go back to the beginning. And I've had this statement in my head. I woke up from a dream one night, and that's the message I got. I didn't remember the dream. I remembered the statement. If you want it to end, you must go back to the beginning. What the hell does that mean? It took me a long time, but I finally at least realized that for me this means if you want your trauma to end, you have to go back to where the trauma happened. And you have to go into that fire, go into the scenario, go into that moment that was so fucked up, and add the information that's missing. A lot of time the trauma exists within us because we have missing information, and that's what we get triggered around. We get stumbled on a scenario in our lives that we don't quite have figured out. It doesn't really fit the timeline perfectly. That's why we get stumbled on it every time. So you have to kind of smooth the wrinkles out in this sheet. If you've ever done that, you have to go right at them. You can't think them away. You can't run from them. What you resist persists. What you run from will follow you until the end of time. Demons are faster than us. You can't outrun a demon. You have to fight it. And that's the scariest thing in the world, because demons are scary, but they can't fight very well. They're just scary. I know a lot of big guys, man. Big dudes. 6'7", 6'6", 260, 320 pounds, muscle. I'm not scared of guys like that. I guarantee you almost every single one of you are. I guarantee you almost every one of you is terrified of these big giant motherfuckers. I guarantee you are. You see Suge Knight coming, you run. I know guys like that, and they don't get in fights because they're too big. Nobody's challenging them for fights. Any fight they've ever been in is their own choice. Shit, I've been attacked, motherfucker. I've had to fight several people. I'm covered in scars and stab wounds. I had my ribs smashed in with baseball bats. I will fight anyone to the death in the street. That's the kind of guy I used to be. These big giant motherfuckers, they're not like that. I've known some big guys that were pussies, man, when it comes down to real battle. They weren't warriors, because they never really thrown a punch in anger. I don't know how I got on that sidetrack. I was listening to a talk. Let's go to the next one. I got some time. We can stretch this to a little bit more. But I think this is worth mentioning because I thought this was an interesting conversation. Now, you can go find this. It was a Andrew Huberman talk with David Goggins. And I've never really been a big fan of Andrew Huberman because of his surfing past. He's a little surfer fuck, and he hung out with some guys that I didn't like. I'm serious with that. Andrew Huberman's little surf homeboys are a bunch of little punk motherfuckers. I'm not kidding. Fuck those guys. So when I see Huberman, I think about his stupid little homeboys, and I'm like, fuck you too. You're down with them. Fuck you too, surfer boy. You got to put the past in the past. He had a very fascinating conversation recently with David Goggins that you can go find. I'm a big David Goggins fan. And they talked about willpower and the anterior segmented cortex, whatever part of your brain that handles the willpower. And you can gain more willpower and grow that part of your brain by doing what you don't want to do. So write a list of the things that you don't want to do. These are the things you don't want to do, the things you're avoiding. I don't want to do this. I really don't want to do this. And making this list may give you anxiety. But you'll have your list of obstacles. Go do those things. You'll become stronger. Have a good Sunday.